So Netflix has released a new Chinese animation or donghua called Heaven Official's Blessing. We're going to talk about it. We're going to take 2 minutes each to let you know our first impressions.
So it's actually not new, it's been out for quite some time, but it's only been available in select platforms like iQIYI. It's actually been out for maybe about a year, but it's new to Netflix and it's available for Western audiences to take and explore. So let's get down to it. 2 minutes, go!
So to summarize what this is all about, it is about a crown prince of Jianle, Jilian. He has ascended 3 times already, and he comes to this heavenly place or heavenly realm and meets Ling Wen, puts him on a journey to earn merits or to earn the worship of believers in the mortal realm. Now at first glance, this is obviously something that is familiar to me in the form of Noragami, which is a Japanese anime about Yato the god, who is just the god of delivery. He needs to work really hard to make people believe in him or to make people worship him, or else he runs the risk of disappearing. Heaven Official's Blessing runs into the trope of all Chinese dramas and all Chinese stories. They put you in the middle of something that is way too convoluted to understand from the get-go. As soon as Zilian arrives in the heavenly realm, we're introduced to 20 characters. I am not going to remember all of these characters, but they are all gods in some way, shape, or form, and they are looking down on him, and so we're supposed to get this overarching story based on this first episode, and it's just not that understandable. Of course, the main premise is there, and that's why it's recognizable or comparable to that anime Noragami, but then it falls into that Chinese thing where each episode is kind of trying to be its own side story, but also trying to touch upon the overarching narrative. And so we have Zilian in the mortal realm trying to earn worshippers or believers, along with deputy gods Fu Yao and Nanfeng. And then it just goes downhill from there. Oftentimes when I watch Chinese dramas, I do have to give it a couple of episodes before I understand the overarching narrative of what they're trying to tell. Of course, I understand the basic premise. He's trying to earn merits and worshippers, but the story takes way too many tangents and goes off on wild goose chases with other, ancillary characters that really confuzzle everything. The animation reminds me a lot of Korra in Avatar: The Last Airbender. Of course, this is an animation studio that is based in China, and it does have some amazing animation. With the fight scenes and the mystical arts and all of the magical powers, the animation does put on an epic display. Fortunately, the story and the animation need to be on par for a show to be 100% good. All in all, I'd give Heaven Official's Blessing a C+ to B-. I'm cautiously optimistic, and I'm trying to keep up with it and finish at least the first season to kind of gain a broader understanding of the narrative. I do enjoy the animation, and the story between Zilian and Anlang is very interesting, and so I do want to keep up with this show and finish it at least in the first season, and try not to abandon it as I do many other Chinese dramas.
2 minutes, go! Okay, all right. So, Heaven's Official Blessing. First of all, I have no idea what's going on, and I have to agree with Element that you're thrown into like all of these different and multiple characters to have to understand so many different things. First off, in the very first episode, in the opening sequences, what the hell is happening? Okay, I have to ask some of my friends, I have to ask Hello X-Ray on the side of what's actually happening, but it's really confusing at the start. But what I do appreciate is that after the 3rd or 4th episode, things start to crystallize and the story starts to get singular. And I really like it so far. There's a lot of downsides in terms of the overall narrative, simply because there's just way too many things that's happening at the same time. But if you start to understand each of the characters' journey and what their purposes are, it actually starts to kind of crystallize and make sense. But I have to agree with Element on where things kind of fall short. It does send you in these wild goose chases and forces you to understand the nuances of its storytelling. And we don't have the rule of 5 to 10 episodes to see if this is actually really good. And that's kind of unfortunate because it's only 13 episodes, and it's going to be really hard for Westerners to get into this type of anime. Where K-dramas reign supreme, or even Japanese anime reigns supreme, is their ability to tell a story in a singular fashion. There's a focus to it right from the beginning, hooking you in. But for this one, it's kind of just all over the place and people might just fall off, which I know we're kind of experienced in watching Chinese dramas where we have to give it enough episodes to give it a chance. But I am getting vibes of The Untamed here, and I am hopeful that this is going to be a really nice surprise. I appreciate the detective angle that it's going through and all of these mysteries about demons and ghosts and high gods and heavenly realms, and it kind of reminds me also of Greek mythology where gods depend on worshippers and depend on prayers to stay relevant. That stuff is really cool and it's very understandable and it's very familiar for a Western audience. But in terms of getting vibes of The Untamed, when Ji Liang, Element says these names much better than I can, so I'm just gonna let it go. When Zhiliang meets the Crimson River God of Power or War, whatever his name is, I get the Untamed vibe of boys love drama. Right now, I'm gonna have to give Heaven's Official Blessing a B-. And you know what? That's okay. I think most of you have seen this already, and most of you have really liked it. I've seen a lot of comments and a lot of people that have really loved this anime so far, and that's okay. For me, from my perspective, a B- is a pretty good grade.
So it looks like we have some common agreements and thoughts on its narrative and overall story structure. I think we both see some potential in this show, especially when you bring out the Untamed. I think that dynamic between Zhelian and Sanlang is very reminiscent of the Untamed. I'm interested to see where that relationship goes in the future. Despite our misgivings of the story structure and the tropes of Chinese dramas taking so long to crystallize, I think definitely if we keep up with it, we will get to that, catalyst that brings us closer and closer into getting really into this donghua.
Yeah, I agree. Like, if you watched Word of Honor, most of us are aware of how amazing Word of Honor is. And so there's definitely this potential here. Like, I know that this is old, and I know that this is kind of just like new for Netflix, and especially like an entry point for Western audiences. But I think we ultimately agree that this is kind of like a hard one to get into. If you're not an experienced Chinese drama watcher or Chinese drama lover, or even not experienced in watching Chinese anime, then this might be a hard one for you. But like, I agree, like you could totally get into this story the further you go.
But that'll do it for our first impressions of Heaven Official's Blessing. Leave it in the comment section down below what you thought of this series, and if you think we should definitely stick with it, because it takes time for us to get into this stuff. But if you feel like we should definitely stick with it, and you think that the story is going to pay off and we're gonna love that, leave it in the comment section down below. But as always, if you liked our first impressions, please leave a like and subscribe if you're new to the channel. And as always, turn on the bell notification so you know when we post new videos. And as always, we'll see you in the next one.